It was August 26, 2010. The Avetrana crime is an August crime, like many in Italian history. It's a family crime. Two women in prison who have always declared themselves and still declare themselves innocent, despite being definitively sentenced to life imprisonment, are Sabrina Misseri and Cosima Serrano. According to the judges, they were the ones who killed Sarah Scazzi. And to hide his body with the help of Michelle Misseri, Sabrina's father and Cosima's husband, sentenced to 8 years for the sole crime of concealing a corpse and released from prison in February 2024, Michelle Misseri returned last February to Avetrana, Taranto, where it all began. On August 26, 2010, the 15-year-old Sarah Scazzi leaves home in the early afternoon in Avetrana, Taranto. He has a cell phone in his hand, he has ears, an earpiece. She has to reach the house of her cousin and best friend Sabrina, who is a few years older than her. He has 22, a few hundred meters from his house, to go to the sea on the Ionian coast of Salento, together with another girl, Mariangela Spagnoletti, who had to pick her up by car on October 6, 2010, during a dramatic interrogation. Miserable, collapses, and confesses. He says he was the one who killed his niece by strangling her in the garage in Via de Leda after refusing her sexual advances. He also says that he buried her in a well near Moscow, on the road to Nardo, where the body is recovered a few hours after the man is arrested. In the same minutes, who saw it on TVA? The drama of Sarah's mother, Concheta Serrano, Spanish, guest at Casa Miseri for yet another appeal, is broadcast, receives the indirect news of her brother-in-law's confession and the discovery of the body. On 15th of October 2010, the first turning point arrives. Misseri calls his daughter Sabrina into question, saying that together they agree to teach Sarah a lesson, for the rumors spread about her uncle's alleged harassment, which later resulted in murder. Her cousin would have taken her to the garage and held her by the shoulders, while her father strangled her. In the afternoon, Sabrina is interrogated in the Carabinieri barracks in Manduria. At 11 p.m., she was arrested for complicity in murder and was transferred to prison. On 26 May 2011, Cosima Serrano, Sabrina's mother and Sarah's aunt, was arrested by the Carabinieri for complicity in murder, as well as in the suppression of a corpse, together with her daughter Sabrina, who is notified in prison of another precautionary custody order for the investigating judge, who does not accept the kidnapping charge made by the prosecutors for the two women. The murder took place in the house. On 30 May 2011, Michelle Misseri was released from prison and returned home with his other daughter, Valentina, who lives in Rome and is completely unrelated to the facts. As soon as he returns, he gives an interview in which he mimics all the phases of the murder and takes full responsibility for it. On 29 July 2011, after a year, the prosecutor's office ends the investigations and requests the indictment of 13 suspects. Cosima and Sabrina Misseri are accused of complicity in murder and kidnapping. Michelle Misseri of suppression of the corpse, together with his brother Carmine, and to his nephew Cosimo Cosma. The preliminary phase of the trial opens on August 29. On 10 January 2012, before the Assisted Court of Taranto, the trial for Sarah's murder began. Sabrina Misseri and her mother Cosima Serrano are behind bars, accused of complicity in voluntary homicide, kidnapping, and disposal of a corpse. The other defendants are Michelle Misseri, accused of complicity in the suppression of a corpse and some minor crimes, his brother Carmine and his nephew Cosimo Cosma, accused of having helped the farmer. A selfie that Sarah sent to Ivano before she died is revealed in the courtroom. According to the prosecution, the photo would prove the motive for the murder, namely Sabrina's jealousy towards her cousin, who had attracted the attention of Ivano Russo, who Sabrina wanted as her boyfriend. On January 31st, 2012, during his testimony in the courtroom, Ivano Russo describes the relationship he had with Sarah and with Sabrina. Sarah saw me as a father figure. Sometimes we would hug. With Sabrina, a confidential relationship was established. At a certain point, however, I saw ambiguous attitudes on his part, compliments that went beyond a few days before Sarah died. I decided to end the relationship because it didn't convince me. On July 3rd, 2012, the medical examiner Luigi Strada exposes his expertise. Sarah was strangled with a belt about 212 cm wide that left a groove on her neck. Death came at 02:03 from asphyxiation. The doctor disavows the version of the murder provided by Misseri and seems to exclude his guilt in the murder. On 20th April 2013, the Court of Assizes of Taranto sentenced Sabrina Misseri and Cosima Serrano to life imprisonment for the murder of Sarah. Michele Misseri, however, is sentenced to 8 years for complicity in the destruction of a corpse. Together with Carmine Misseri and Cosimo Cosma, respectively brother and nephew of the man, the appeal process began on 16th November 2014 at the Court of Assizes of Taranto. During the first hearing, it was established that the two defendants, Sabrina Misseri and Cosima Serrano, must remain in prison for the entire duration of the trial. On 27 February 2015, the wiretaps made on calls from Sabrina Misseri's phone on the night of 7 October 2010 and the date of the discovery of Sarah's body were read in the courtroom. Sabrina talks to Sarah's mother at 1 in the morning, and the lawyer Biscotti asks if her father is really accused of murder. The other phone call is the last conversation between Sabrina and her father, Michel Misseri, arrested after confessing to the murder. The girl says, "Why didn't you tell me sooner, Dad?" As if she were certain of the man's guilt, the second-degree conviction arrived on 27 July 2015. The Assize Court of Appeal of Taranto confirms the sentence already imposed at first instance against mother and daughter for the murder of Sarah Scazzi, niece and cousin of the victim, in February 2017. The Court of Cassation pronounces the final word after almost 7 years on the Avetrana crime, confirming the life sentences imposed in the second instance on the two women. It was Sabrina and Cosima Misseri who killed Sarah Scazzi on the afternoon of August 26, 2010. And to hide his body with the help of Michel Misseri, Sabrina's father and Cosima's husband, sentenced to 8 years for the crime of concealing a body alone. In February 2024, 7 years after the Supreme Court ruling, and almost 14 years after the crime, Michel Misseri leaves Lecce prison on the main charge, that of concealment of a corpse, that was added for the crime of defamation against the consultant Roberta Bruzone and his former lawyer Daniele Gallopa. The announcement came in January. Misseri obtained an overall sentence reduction of more than 600 days. I'm Sarah's killer. They don't believe me because they made me change the versions. I didn't change them, they made me change them. When I was 6, my father took me to a farm to be a shepherd. They raped me there. I never told anyone, and if I had, it would have been worse. There were two, father and son, and I was about 6 years old. My father never defended me because I couldn't speak, but he understood something because he washed our panties and saw. Even my wife and daughters didn't know. His motive would come from there. Michel Miseri, in fact, in the early phases of the investigation, had admitted that he had abused his niece before the murder, and then recanted. In one of the interviews in recent weeks, he said that he also raped his niece, his eldest daughter Valentina, who lives in Rome and was not in Avetrana at the time of the crime. She was interviewed and reiterated her father's guilt. The magistrate's reconstruction reports the murder in the house and then the concealment of the body. The only accusation for Uncle Michel, who changes almost 10 versions of the facts and is considered unreliable. It is the two women who acted out of looking at a boyfriend, out of jealousy, out of family grudges. Difficult to give a single explanation. In the reasons for the sentence of the first criminal section of the Supreme Court, which confirmed the life sentence, there is talk of cold planning, of a strategy aimed, through unscrupulous, oblique, and misleading behavior, at achieving Sabrina's impunity, again according to the sentence. He diverted investigations into false leads and exploited the media. The Avetrana case has deeply shaken Italian public opinion, bringing to light complex family dynamics and controversial psychological profiles. In this video, we will analyze the personalities of Sabrina Miseri, Cosima Serrano, and Michele Miseri, trying to outline their psychological profile based on the information that emerged during the investigations and the trial. According to the psychological profile drawn up by the experts, Sabrina Miseri was described as a young woman with a strong and decisive character, with narcissistic personality traits. Her need for control and recognition within the family and social nucleus often made her competitive and possessive, especially towards friendships and emotional relationships. On a psychological level, Sabrina appears as a figure in search of affirmation, with difficulty managing rejection and frustration, the manipulative aspect, and the ability to influence those around her. These were elements that emerged several times during the trial. Cosima Serrano, Sabrina's mother and Sarah's aunt, has been described as an austere and severe woman, endowed with a closed and authoritarian character. His figure within the family was dominant, exercising strong control over domestic dynamics. Psychologically, Cosima seems to embody a profile of an overprotective and rigid mother. Personality contracts that suggest poor empathy and a tendency to control. His apparent coldness and difficulty in expressing emotions contributed to creating a familiar environment characterized by tensions and heavy silences. Over the course of the investigations, his position became increasingly suspicious due to his reticence and his desire to defend Sabrina at all costs. This behavior could be interpreted as a form of extreme maternal protection that led her to deny any possible involvement of her daughter in the crime. Michel Miseri is perhaps the most enigmatic character in this story. From the beginning of the investigation, he provided conflicting versions of the facts by self-incriminating, to then recant and involve first Sabrina and then Cosima. His attitude is often ambiguous, characterized by moments of apparent sincerity, alternating with confusing and contradictory statements. His suggestibility and his need to please others made him a figure easily influenced by both his wife and daughter. The sense of guilt that seems to emerge from his statements. It could derive not only from possible involvement in the crime, but also from the awareness that you did not have control of the situation. The Avetrana case remains one of the most complex in Italian crime news. The psychological analysis of Sabrina Miseri, Cosima Serrano, and Michele Miseri highlights dysfunctional family dynamics, were control, manipulation, and guilt. They played a decisive role. The psychology behind this crime shows how toxic relationships and repressed tensions can degenerate into unimaginable tragedies. The question of what really happened that day remains open, but one thing is certain. Avetrana's crime brought to light the darkest shadows of the human mind and the most complex family ties.